Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to paint some whales, so let's do it! Okay, so to start, I'm just going to go through my materials. I have my Arches watercolor paper, I have my Winsor Cotman watercolors in my palette, I have my Princeton snap brushes, I have a size 10, a 6, and a 2 on hand, my paper towel, my water, and I also have watercolor pencils. Someone had suggested to me, instead of sketching out with a pencil, try and use a water-soluble pencil crayon, or colored pencil as you call them, and that way when you start with the watercolor, it will just blend into it. So I'm going to try that today. And I also have my reference photo. So we're going to be doing an orca whale. I just found this photo on Pinterest. So I try to look up photography, not painting. So I'm not copying someone's painting, but rather a real reference photo of an actual animal. If you are not as handy with drawing freehand, I don't think there's any harm in tracing. It's actually helpful if you have an iPad. You can always put your paper over top of your iPad, turn all your lights off, turn up the brightness, and you could trace that way if you wanted to. I'm going to try it freehand, so let's just see how this goes. Okay, so I'm going to be doing an orca whale to start. So I'm just going to turn my page sideways. And now this might be interesting with the watercolor pencil because you can't really erase it, can you? Okay, so I'm just going to start with the back going up. I'm just going to do a really light sketch. And because the whale is black and white, it actually probably won't matter if I have to erase or just go over the lines. I'm going to put the fin over here, but I'm just going to keep going down. And the tail has kind of like a curve over here. This is the black part. And it comes out like that. Like a little bow there. And then another curve. I find the most difficult thing about drawing is getting the proportions right. So I do spend a lot of time erasing usually. So if you do too, there is no shame in that. You know, not drawing freehand is difficult and that takes lots and lots of practice. We'll see what this looks like. And then it's kind of like a big curve. Got these big fat bodies. All right. So we got the shape there. I wonder if this erases. It kind of erases. Okay, good to know. It's all good. I also need to invest in a decent eraser. You would think I'd have these things, but I don't. Okay, so there's like a fin here. And it's black, so it's okay if I don't do it properly exactly, because I'll just go over it with watercolor paint. And there's another fin coming down here. If this is boring, this part is boring, you can definitely skip it and go right to the painting part. I will not be offended because I don't really know if I'm helping by teaching you anything right now, just watching me draw this. And then the fin up here. God, I hope this turns out. Okay. I feel like it has to go back a bit more. Erase, erase. Okay. Let's try and make it back a bit further. It's an interesting angle of this too. You can always pick a easier. I feel like this has to be longer. All right. Okay. Let's see how this goes. I feel like once I start painting, it might be better. Okay, I'm just gonna do the lines where the black is. So it goes in like that. Yeah. I'm gonna erase this part because that's where the white is gonna be. There's gonna be a bit of black coming in here. Ooh. Here. Okay. And then that white bit where the eye is. You know, for the longest time I thought this white part here was the eye. This really big giant eye. It's not. Looks like it though, right? Okay. Okay, so now I think I have a rough outline of my killer whale, my orca whale, whatever you call it. And now I'm going to fill it in with a light wash of black. And the reason why I do that is because I go back over it and make some parts darker and some parts lighter. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm just gonna do a light wash of where all the black is. And some of that blue from the watercolor pencil will mix into it, which I don't mind because, I mean, I could have used the black pencil, but the whale is underwater and it's gonna have like a tinge of blue to it anyway. So I thought it might be a nice little touch. So just gonna go over it with a light wash first. Now I'm gonna try and do it super fast, but kind of fast, if that makes sense, because I'm gonna wanna go over it again while it's still wet. There's the fin. I actually might switch to a larger brush in a second, so I can get this part done faster before it dries. Also, if it dries before you get to that part, you can always re-wet the whole area again. Like up here, I'm gonna have to re-wet. And people were asking me about how to shade and where shadows go. That's the great thing about looking at a photo, is that you can just look at the photo of where the darker bits are. Okay, so you don't really have to use your imagination to kind of guess where they go. Just look at the reference photos of where the darker bits are, where the highlights are. I may do another video later on about shading and shadows and all that stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna start with this part. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my black and I'm just gonna go along the lines, and I think it just gives a really nice effect when it bleeds out like that. I might go over the fin again later to separate it. And just kind of drop in that black and let it bleed places. I think it looks super cool. Move this, okay. I'm gonna switch my brush. This one's a little bit big for this. Along the back. And I'm gonna wait for it to dry, and I'm gonna go over that fin again so I can make it a bit more pronounced. Now, you're not gonna know the right amount of water by just making sure it doesn't pool everywhere. Like right here, it's pooling a bit. So what I can do is just dry off my brush and just grab some of that color and just kind of move it around. Okay, you don't want it dripping everywhere, but you want that color to bleed. And so the lighter bits here, this is where you can kind of start deciding where you want the shadows and the highlights to be by leaving some of those spots a little lighter. So right here on the top of the back, I'm gonna leave a little bit lighter. I'm gonna leave this fin lighter until it dries, and then I'm gonna go back in the darker bits underneath the fin. But I'm just gonna darken up kind of like around here, the underbelly, because you have to decide where your light source is coming from. And in the picture, the light source is coming from above. So you gotta imagine that it's hitting the top of the whale. So you're gonna have the lightest part at the top. So I'm just gonna get these under parts a bit more dark, especially down here. Okay. And then the back of this fin, because the light is hitting right there. I might even, hold on, might even drop a little bit of blue in there. To where the highlights kind of are, so just a bit. Now be sure not to add too much water, because the water is going to push all the color and it's going to leave this interesting pattern. So not too much paint, not too much water, just a tad, just to get kind of like a tint of blue going. Maybe a bit on the face here, so I'm just going to take up some of this paint. Now there's quite a bit of black right there too. So you can just remove some of that paint either with your paper towel, or you can just drag it with your paintbrush and just kind of dry it like that. Just gonna blend it together. Okay. Now I will do this underside fin. So this, because it's under the whale, is a lot darker. So I'm just gonna try and make that darker black. Just gonna do my outline and wet it up first. I keep getting this horrible feeling that I forgot to press record. So if I ever pause, it's because I'm looking at my camera going, oh my gosh, please tell me it's still recording, or it's in frame. I gotta come up with a better setup. So I'm just gonna drop a bunch of black in there. Now this whole fin is gonna be pretty dark because it's underneath the light source, underneath the whale's body. So not too much water, but paint. Wet up that paint and drop it in there so it's nice and dark. And then there's also a dark bit down here. Like that. And as it starts to dry, it will lighten up a bit, so you might want to go over some areas if it's still wet in those areas, and you can drop in paint. Or if you really want to darken it up, you can wait till it's all dry, go over the area fully with water, and then add another layer of paint. Yeah, okay. So that's my first layer. I am going to go back in and do that fin again, and I'm going to add some color to the white part, but I want it to fully dry first, because if I were to go in right now and it were to touch the black would bleed into this white part, and I want to leave it quite separate. So I'm going to come back when it's dry. Okay, so now that it's dry, I'm going to be doing the white part. Now, nothing really besides highlights are ever fully white. They're always going to have like a tint of something to it. At this point, because you are doing the white, if you want to change your water, go ahead. My water is a light gray. I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm not too too good with that, but whatever. As you can see, there's like a tint of gray, but that's okay because I don't want it fully white anyway. So I'm just going to wet up this white area fully. Now, as you see, I'm using the watercolor pencil. The blue is starting to run a bit as I add water, but that's okay because I want to add a bit of a tint of blue there anyway. I'm going to actually add a tint of the gray just so I can see where I'm putting the water. I'm just going to wet this entire area. Okay, now the highlight of this white area is going to be closest to the top. So you want this to be the lightest part. So I'm not going to touch this part anymore with paint. There's already a little tint of gray to it, which is good. Now I'm just going to take some blue. I should have put a separate area for this. This really light blue. And I'm just going to kind of touch it a lot. Not too much blue. You don't want it to be super, super blue. But a little tint of blue like that. And maybe even a little bit of gray. Just to get that shadow, especially on the under the belly down here, because that's where the shadow would be. But I'm leaving this area light. I'm not going back over that with paint. Maybe a bit more blue. Just the reflection of the water hitting that white part. Just moving it around, blending it. And even if you wanted to make that part really white, you could take your paper towel and just create some highlights just by mopping that up a bit. Can't really tell, it's fine. I actually might get some more gray going here at the bottom, so it's actually shaded. There's a shadow down here. There we go. Ooh. Now I'm just gonna wet this little white part up, do the same thing. Now this is still down below, so it's gonna be closer to that color, the blue and gray. Because it's away from the light source. Now kind of where I mopped up here, as it's drying, it's making a weird pattern, so I'm just going over it with the water. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the eye here, but the eye is pretty light because it's closest to the light. So I'm just going to put water over top, maybe a little tint of blue like that. That's about it though. And then the tail down here is going to be darker because it's furthest away from the light source. So I've had a couple people comment saying that I teach bad habits by not cleaning my water. That's just something I don't usually do. I mean, if it's really bad, I will. But I'll just put a disclaimer saying, if you are doing white bits like this and you don't want that muddy color in there, go change your water. I didn't, but you know, If you want it to be really perfect like that, totally do it. I'm all for it. I'm kind of on a time limit when I shoot these things. You never know when my kid's gonna wake up. So I just don't. But that's me. Okay. I'm gonna make it a bit darker, I think. Just drop some color in there. Like that. Okay. Maybe something there too. Okay. Now I'm gonna do this fin again, but because it's touching down here, I don't want that color to run into there, into the white part, so I'm just gonna let that dry first. Okay, now to really pronounce that fin, I'm gonna go over it with a really light wash of water. I think it's up here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so make sure the area is completely dry. Like this. Then I'm going to take my black and I'm just going to tap the bottom part of this fin. I want the highlight on top. Now see, you got to make sure the surrounding area is completely dry or else it will run into it. The paint will run into like that area and you won't get that definition of this fin. Okay, and there you go. And I just put the black right at the bottom so you still get that highlight on top. And there you go. And I actually might, because this is a little jagged, I'm just gonna go around the eye a bit. There we go. And there we go. And I guess the eye part, right? The eye of the actual whale would be a good idea. I'm just gonna put a little dark area there. I think that's where it is, right? No, it's not. Hold on. You can barely see the eyes in the picture. I'll lift that up. I think the eye is more. Oh no, it is over there. Okay, it's all good. Like that. And there you go. There is your orca whale. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.